Alright, guys, peeps, whatever you want to be called. So, a couple of general updates that are important. Wait, is I believe for. Sorry, well, I use Bandicam to make my videos, for the most part. I'm going to stitch together a couple of videos I took with my phone earlier today, in this video. So, that'll be fun. But, a few quick updates for people who are just tuning in to my content. One, I am basically recovered from my concussion. I hit my head the week before last, and was having really bad symptoms. And so I was kind of down for a week and a half. Yeah, when you're emptying your dishwasher, you should make sure that the cupboards and the doors that are around the dishwasher are closed, um, so you don't get clobbered by them. Anyway, I hit my head, and then I had several days of really horrible nausea, and I couldn't balance or see properly. I probably shouldn't have been driving. I figured I would be okay, and I would get through it. And then my friend, well, one of the people I was working with on campus was like, you should probably see a doctor so you don't get permanent brain damage. And so I did, and they just told me to cut back on the caffeine. I'm not even going to admit to how much caffeine I drink on a daily basis. That's another story. Um, but it's been a week and a half, and I'm much better now. I can see again. Well, I was able to see, but I was having a hard time reading things. My reflexes are back to normal, and I'm, in pretty good shape for that, as far as that goes. So I'm okay. Um, Not fun to have a concussion. Um, so a couple of quick things. One, it is a very busy time of year for me right now. I have on this video a couple of short clips. I'm going to try to narrate over. I didn't speak in the little clips I made. I'm going to quickly narrate over what I was doing today and the past couple days. But we have a lot of things going on right now. Semester is wrapping up. I'm in the middle of doing replates on a shit ton of orchids. And I'll get to that in a minute. I am working on getting my dormant plants taken out of dormancy. I have a lot of plants. Um, I have a lot of animals that are waking up from diapause, hibernation, brumation, whatever you call it for whatever the species is. Um, and I just got finished mantis sitting for some. I've just had a lot going on. So you may not see a lot of new content from me. I have a couple of things that I pre-recorded that I'll probably schedule to premiere or something like that in the coming days or week. But right now, I have just so much going on, so I may be a little scarce. I'm also possibly moving, and I'll figure that part out in a couple of days. But there's a good chance I'm going back to the East Coast. That'll be exciting. I miss New England. That's where I grew up, and Colorado is not as fun. So anyway, we have a couple of things to go over. So I will give you guys a response to something. There are a lot of random things that end up in my YouTube recommended feed that I want to respond to, so I've made myself a playlist of stuff to eventually respond to, and I would like to get to some of that content before it ages too much, but I can't guarantee anything, and I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I have also been having a really hard time sleeping, despite not having as much caffeine on account of the concussion. So yeah, that's super fun. I do have, well, I'm not going to give you guys a roach update unless people really want to learn about the roaches back there, but I am doing some work with orchids right now where I'm exploring alternative protein sources for the media. So generally, for most orchids, you use either peptone or casein hydrolysate. Those are both cow proteins. casein hydrolysate is an enzyme-treated milk protein, and peptide is generally what you do is you like put the cow blood on a petri plate. I think it's the blood. It's some cow tissue, and you let bacteria break it down, and then you pull the material out of that. It's really weird and kind of gross, but I am working on extracting the protein from various insect sources. And the reason for that is because insect protein is a more sustainable protein. And Bill Steele, who does a lot of cypripedium stuff, I mean, he's 81 years old, so he's kind of on the verge of croaking, unfortunately, was talking to me about this a couple of weeks ago because I forgot how the conversation got started, but I asked him about insect protein, and he told me one of his friends, who is dead, so can't help us with this, was using Bombix or silkworm proteins. And so I might try to raise silkworms again. I did a good job, I had a lot of success with silkworms back in Rhode Island, but here there's one mulberry tree around us, and, so I'll have to wait until that leaves out again, because when I tried rearing silkworms on an artificial diet, flies lay their eggs in the diet, and the caterpillars died because of that. Yeah, that's the sort of shit that happens out here. But, you roll with the punches. Now, on my main personal channel, you can learn more about my rearing endeavors, but here, I've been working on gathering insect material for extraction of proteins. I did kind of a dry run, if you will, of insect protein extraction with lobster roaches. The postdoc in our lab is going to help me with some of that. She has a good method, I think. So I'm going to chat with her this week about it. See what she recommends I do. Because I didn't get a lot of lobster roach protein from the lobster roaches that I boiled and then used like alcohol and muriatic acid and stuff. Is it a little scary that you can like go to fucking Walmart and buy like the chemicals you need to make mustard gas for like $10? Yes, but it's also handy because you can precipitate out proteins from insects. So with that, what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to show you a couple of quick little clips of some of the fun stuff that I've been up to the past couple days. There are a couple of people who claim that like internet atheists don't have like a life outside of YouTube, and that's not true. So you'll just kind of see a couple of the things that I've been doing on a day-to-day basis, and we will go ahead and respond to something that was that showed up in my feed. So let's do this.
Across
Here
the
we go.
board, being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do.
It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex.
You believe?
Okay. Wait, why did it start at, let's just, yeah, I don't know why it started at 6 seconds, but let's do this. Okay, ready? Let's do this. Come
Being
on.
transgender is about the bravest thing you can do.
It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex.
You believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I think this is Wretched. It's a Christian channel on YouTube, and it's I think just showing a compilation of things.
So you're denying that trans people exist?
A transgender woman losing her cool when she says an employee at an Albuquerque video game store called her sir instead of ma'am.
I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's
that's
her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Like waves that crash against the shore. Cue the B-roll, please. Feminism has been relentlessly slamming against the shores of traditional values for over a century.
So what does he mean by traditional values? The problem with this traditional values idea is that there has been a long history before Christianity of humans existing having various things they deemed acceptable. So societies before Christianity and some of the other Abrahamic religions became popular were perfectly fine with people having, all sorts of gender identities, people having different sexual orientations, and, you know, having these lifestyles that weren't, you know, nuclear family type things. We see it in a lot of ancient cultures, ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, certainly, you know, indigenous peoples of the Americas, where they didn't really give a shit if you were, you know, gay or trans or anything of that sort. You know, they just, you know, were okay as long as you were a productive member of society and you weren't going around like stabbing people. Nobody really cared.
First wave of feminism, right around the turn of the century. What did they want? The right to vote.
Well, yeah. So let's just pretend that half the population is men, half the population is women. It's a little more complicated than that, but you know, this Todd here, that's his name, he's he needs to start from the basics. So if we have a society where everybody's living under a common rule, and the goal is to have that rule be representative of the desires and the needs of the people, preventing half of those people from contributing and giving input on whatever it is that you're, you know, deciding is going to be the rule is a really bad idea.
By the late 20th century, however, second wave feminism, led by Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, and others, wanted to separate the procreative act from the procreative consequence. In other words, they wanted sexual liberation, baby. Modern third wave feminism wants to separate women from their gender. Matt Walsh exposed this, of course, in What is a Woman? But in
Yes, and I will at some point watch that and respond to it. I think I found it, but I'm not positive. In any case, I gotta find some time to do that. Maybe June, July-ish, I'll have some time. But let's see what Todd here is getting at.
my humble opinion, Matt never really went about the business of defining what a woman is.
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
Marry one and find out.
Well, you wouldn't think it would be necessary to define what a woman is any more than you should have to debate over what a pair of eyeglasses are. It does force us to study the subject of femininity.
So, what I'm wondering is why these people need things to be incredibly cut and dry. Now, I'm a biologist by trade. I do a lot of work on biological systems, ecology, things like that. And we are inherently biological entities, but that's another matter. The thing you have to realize is that in any biological system, things aren't really all that simple. So for example, you can have one type of moth that when it feeds on a plant that's encountered drought stress, that particular moth languishes because the plant isn't nutritious enough. But you can have another type of moth that feeds on the same plant and does better than it normally would because the plant doesn't have the energy to make toxic compounds that harm that moth. And so in terms of the question, what is the effect of drought on an herbivore? It's going to depend entirely on that herbivore. Now, when it comes to something like what is a woman, well, I think we need to first separate biological sex, which isn't strictly binary anyway, from gender. And I don't understand, especially when we get into Christianity with the weird Trinity thing, and some are like, oh, the Trinity, you know, Father, Son, Holy Spirit are all the same person, and some are like, no, they're all separate people, and some are like, oh, it's actually both. Okay, you can understand that level of complexity, but you can't understand that sex and gender are different things. In your mind, they have to mean the exact same thing. And these are the same people who don't always want there to be multiple words for the same thing. And it's just, it's like selectively on their part being, not nitpicky, but, it's like they're selectively, irritated or confused about a concept.
Culture thinks there's only two theories of femininity, the traditional and the modern model. You know, the old dumb people and now the super smart people. And you and I might be inclined to reflexively side with the traditional model of femininity because, hey, June Cleaver, that's a lot better than a dude who wears a girl's swimming suit and beats women in swimming race.
Okay, real quick. So, I've said this before. The majority of trans people are not star athletes. Being trans is not a guarantee you're going to be athletic. The average trans person in the United States is just like the average American. Overweight, unable to get off their ass and move around. They're not, you know, star athletes by any means. Okay? Most Americans aren't star athletes by any means. I'm not a star athlete by any means. I don't have very good muscle tone, and I'm not sedentary per se, but my movement is mostly just brisk walking and, you know, sometimes lifting, you know, boxes full of plant media or, you know, the axolotl tank or whatever. I'm not, you know, a power lifter. I'm not a sprinter, you know, whatever. And the majority of Americans, cis, trans, or anything else, aren't star athletes. And being trans does not inherently make you athletic. Now, other things to consider are that generally people who are trans athletes are, you know, people who have known they've been, you know, that they're trans for quite a large portion of their lifespan. You know, it's not the, you know, the South Park episode where, like, last week the grown dude was like, no, now I'm a woman, and, you know, went and competed in all these, things, you know. If anybody's seen that episode of South Park, they were just making fun of the idea that people have that's how this works. That's not how this works. There are regulations as far as, you know, what kinds of, hormone levels are acceptable for athletes, cis and trans alike. Now, if somebody works their ass off and they win a sports competition, first of all, why do we care that much about who gets the trophy or the medal or whatever prize at the end of it? Who really gives a shit? It's people playing around at some game or competition so that we can pass the time watching it. Okay? That's all it is. I mean, come on.
Pieces, but I get that. But let's take a closer look at the competing positions and see if maybe, just maybe, we Christians should be touting a third model of femininity. This is John Fabarez from our TV series and youth group study, Road Trip to Truth.
The cultural debate on what defines a woman can be roughly.
Hang on, let me see. I'm having a hard time hearing this, and I have really good hearing. I don't know if my laptop is just being stupid right now, or if this video is just naturally pretty quiet.
Split into two models, the traditional and the modern. The traditional model of femininity is strong on physical and emotional definitions, but
humans are not that sexually dimorphic. If we look at other primate species, like gorillas, for example, you know, where the males are like twice the weight of the females, and they're, you know, quite a bit taller, quite a bit wider, they have more muscle, you know. Of course, human males tend, not always, but tend to have a greater muscle mass on average. It doesn't necessarily, and, you know, there's a slight difference in, like, some of the bone structure. But as far as, you know, dimorphism goes, and I work with a lot of sexually dimorphic species, Sexual dimorphism is basically just the idea that different sexes within an organism have different physical presentations that are relatively easy to spot. So, some moths, for example, the males and females are totally different colors. That's a very easy dimorphism. Some species of insect, some species of fish, reptile, amphibian, blah, 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 one sex is much, much larger than the other, to the point where you practically can't mistake them for each other, especially when, like, the immature stages are a totally different color. So the mature, like black widows, for example, males and females are, female black widows are humongous, males are little, and the immatures, the babies, are a totally different color. So, there's not like, oh, well, what if that's just an immature female that's the size of an adult male? Well, it's a different color, so it's clearly not an adult male. So dimorphism can occur, but if you look at humans, we're not that dimorphic. There are, stereotypical male and female humans where, the features are pretty easy to tell apart, but that's not the average.
Performatively, women are restricted to societal roles of wife and mother. In other words, it's low on freedom. The modern model of femininity says women are completely free to choose their own roles in society.
Why is that a bad thing?
But physically, anyone can be a woman, including men.
I mean, man and woman aren't the only two options, but that's a story for another day.
In other words, it offers too much freedom while being low on meaningful definitions. So, with severe deficiencies in each model, where do we look? Is there some other model that can give women a sound standard to live by? Well, hold your skepticism, because we're going to consider the Bible.
No, thank you.
The biblical model of femininity can be broken into three categories: the physical, the emotional, and the performative. Category 1, the physical. According to the Bible, there are only two genders.
I mean, technically, I think God made man and woman, but the Bible doesn't say he made only man and woman.
Male and female. Humans are what's called sexually dimorphic.
We're not, well, I mean, so yes, we're technically dimorphic, but again, it's like they have this false dichotomy. It's not necessarily dimorphic versus non-dimorphic. The relative terms. It's how dimorphic or non-dimorphic are we? If you draw like an axis, or you have like a wheel, where some things are highly dimorphic and some things are really not that dimorphic. Most organisms on the planet fall kind of in the middle, okay? And that's because most, animals, well, most organisms are either beetles or plants, right? And moths. And generally, most species, you can't really tell the males from the females unless you dissect their bodies to look at the genitals that are inside of them. Or in the case of plants, many, many plants are what are called monoecious, where they have a full set of sexual organs from male and female reproductive modes. And they're not it's not just plants. There are a lot of animals that are the same way. Now, plants are unique in that some plants can self-fertilize, whereas animals generally can't. So, like snails, for example. A lot of snails are hermaphroditic, where every snail of the species has eggs and sperm, but they still have to find another snail, and, snail A puts its sperm in snail B, and snail B returns the favor by putting its sperm in snail A, so they both walk away from the interaction pregnant, but they can't fertilize themselves. There are some plants, particularly in the Fabaceae, the bean family, where the flower literally collapses in on itself to make the pollen stick to the receptive surface of the flower to pollinate it. And so, like, that's why you can grow, like, beans inside when there are no pollinators around, because they self-pollinate anyway. But in any case, the majority of organisms are fairly non-dimorphic. They don't have a high degree of dimorphism. Humans have some dimorphism, but compared to similar species, And then compared to, like, the average animal, we're really not that dimorphic.
That is, men and women exhibit physical differences beyond those of their reproductive systems. Women have softer features, slanted femurs, which give them
That is because of reproduction, but go on.
wider hips and are generally of a smaller frame with less muscle mass. These characteristics suit women for hospitality, crafting with their hands, and rearing children.
I don't get the hospitality and crafting aspect. Now, if you have somebody with a naturally small frame, for example, it's not necessarily so. One of the things is that your biological sex is a polygenic trait. There are a couple of things that mediate your biological sex. And it's not just your hormones, it's not just your chromosomes, blah, blah, blah. It's, a whole bunch of things. And so you could have mixing and matching so that you have, more naturally muscular females and, less muscular males and, everything in between.
But despite their physical differences and their perceived usefulness, the Bible is clear. Men and women are of equal value, equally reflecting the glory of their perfect and holy Creator. And
so is God like a hermaphrodite then? And just decided to, like, divvy up, like, portions of his self. Like, I just think of, like, if you have ADHD, you can either be really super focused or all over the fucking place. And for me, it's going to depend on a number of factors, such as how much sleep have I gotten, when did I last take my medications, this and that. And so it would be like me, splitting myself in half and having one character from myself that's really laser focused and, like, to the point where you have to take that being and, like, knock it unconscious and then put it in another room so that when it wakes up, it just picks something else up. And then one that can't stay focused on anything. And, both can be useful for certain tasks. But, does that mean that God has, like, male and female components?
this value stays constant no matter what culture says. Any teaching, whether traditional or modern, that declares men are more important or valuable than women is in direct violation of this first principle and is thoroughly unbiblical. Category number 2, the emotional. The Bible shows women as nurturing, empathetic supporters.
I like the eggs. No, that's a baby. Sorry. I thought it was, like, one egg that was on its side and one egg that was up like this, and she was just cradling 2 eggs, and I'm like, what the hell is she cradling eggs for? Oh, hang on. Oh, we're still rolling. Okay. I don't know why my mouse is doing that weird thing, but that's okay.
Who bring a strong connectedness to their relationships. It's not that women are more emotional than men, as both share the same emotions in different measures, but women tend to be more emotive or expressive with their emotions. Category 3, the performative. Flowing out of God's design for women as the gentler, hospitable, more empathetic members of the human race, women are called to fulfill the role of submissive supporter. While at face value, submission may sound like second-class citizenship for women, it operates more like a dance, where one person leads and the other follows. Neither are more valuable than the other, but if each disregards their respective roles, you don't have a dance. You have chaos. Yes, it's true that God is described with male pronouns and is called our Father, but God is not a man. He's male in his essence, yes, but it still requires 2 genders to glorify God to the max. In this way, women are a rich complement to their male counterparts, bringing glory to a God that exemplifies leading and submission. And if you still are not persuaded that it's a noble thing to be a helper to others, God describes himself as a helper. The perfect, most powerful creator of all life calls himself helper. And what's good enough for God is good enough for the women that he's created.
The biblical and the traditional model of femininity, they do share more similarities than the modern model, but we should actually reject both the traditional and modern model and proclaim the biblical model of femininity, which actually answers the question, what is a woman? What makes a woman feminine? 1, she has unique DNA. 2,
I mean, we all have unique DNA, technically. So, again, about the DNA. In humans, our sex is determined by several things. It is determined by your sex chromosomes, which, by the way, XX and XY are not the only options. And I can go on a long tangent about that. I'm not going to, but there are additional arrangements of sex chromosomes that can occur because of something called non-disjunction, where when cells are undergoing gametogenesis, the meiosis process, sometimes the chromosomes don't actually split from each other like they're supposed to, or like they normally would. And because of this, you end up with gametes that have extra chromosomes. Now, in some cases, it's not compatible with life. In some cases, it causes severe health conditions. So I was talking to my sister about this because she does genetic stuff, and she was telling me about like trisomy 3, for example, is not compatible with life. And one of the things that happens when so for those of you who aren't aware, humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay. 22 somatic or body determining chromosomes. That's a misnomer, but just roll with it for now. And then the pair of sex chromosomes. Now, the chromosomes are kind of numbered in a, like, the biggest chromosome is chromosome 1, the second biggest is chromosome 2, the smallest would be your sex chromosomes, which are 23, and so it goes down. And the bigger the chromosome, the more of a problem you have if you have an extra one in your nucleus, because the nucleus of the cell can't actually close and be functional with all that extra DNA. So, like, how can I... So if you have, let's say you have a little plastic baggie, right? It's a little sandwich bag. And you have to put some marbles in it. And let's say you have different sized containers of marbles, right? And so somebody says, okay, I'm going to give you a handful of these, so pretend that this is the chromosome and the marbles inside are the DNA, okay? And somebody says, okay, you have to get all of these marbles into this bag. Now, if they give you the correct number, you're fine. And there's a little bit of extra space in the bag when you're done. If they give you an extra one of the small cups of marbles to throw in, not that big a deal. But if they give you the biggest size container full of marbles, that bag can't close, and you don't have a functional bag of marbles. So, the bigger the chromosome, the more of a problem an extra chromosome of that size is. And that's why there are only a couple of diseases that are, there are a number of conditions that are caused by having an extra chromosome, but only a few are compatible with life, because the bigger that chromosome, the less likely that cell is to survive having that extra genetic material in it. Now, the sex chromosomes are so small that if you have an extra sex chromosome, it's probably not the end of the world. Now, what's going to happen, now, in plants, for example, the nucleus behaves a little bit differently, where extra DNA can actually be, like, extruded from the nucleus and still used by the plant cell, and it's all fine. Animals are a little bit more rigid in what they can, fit into their genetic makeup. And so you can't really have animals with extra chromosome sets. In general, there are some exceptions. Because it's biology, there are always exceptions, okay? But in general, extra chromosomes are bad news, especially if they're the bigger chromosomes. So I was having this conversation with my sister. Now, your biological sex is determined on a biochemical level by a couple of things. There are some genes on the Y chromosome, for example, that turn on genes in other regions of the DNA that are on somatic chromosomes that tell, like, the genital tubercle to become a penis instead of a clitoris, and other things like that. And so it's not just the Y chromosome, it's that Y chromosome having stuff that basically turns on other genes, tells them to do a certain thing that they wouldn't otherwise do. And so it's a very complicated system, okay? And the XY sex determination system is not the only sex determination system. We're not going to get into that, but just know that in humans, the reason you're male or female or intersex has to do with the arrangement of genes on your chromosomes at fertilization and how they interact with other genes in your DNA. This is why you can have people who present as male, but maybe they don't have testicles, they have ovaries, or maybe, there's a penis or ambiguous genitalia or something like that. And, these are all things that happen. So to say that there's just male and female is really misleading and is really misguided because that's not the case.
She has unique reproductive organs. 3, she's more nurturing than men. 4, she's more
Casey Anthony has entered the chat.
Emotionally expressive than men. 5, she possesses less muscle mass, wider hips, and isn't as fast as males. Number 6, she possesses a whole lot of skills that can be utilized in the marketplace. 7, she glorifies God in a unique way because of her ability to nurture, love, serve, submit, exactly the way that God does. The biblical model differs from both traditional and modern views. Those models, they're just plain deficient. The biblical model is not, but of course it isn't. Wouldn't you expect it to be perfect? Because after all, it is, biblical.
Okay. My computer and my Google Drive are not cooperating right now with my nice little video clips of some of my stuff from earlier today. I'll deal with that later. So yeah. God, now I'm tired. That's good. I need to sleep. For people who are wondering what is going to happen on the channel in the next couple of weeks is, I'll probably just get a couple of, things out there. I have a couple of silly little, videos that I made that I just didn't get around to uploading yet. I just gotta compile pieces together, and then I'll upload them, when I get the chance. My nose is running. And, then I will, try to get a couple things, response videos, oh, God, made. And, I'll try to get some stuff out, but, just know I'm in the middle of, 8 different things, and, one of my projects I'm probably going to scrap. I was trying to start a colony of a butterfly, but, I don't even have time to take care of their house plants right now, and, it's just going to be a pain in the ass if I pursue it. And so, I have a couple of projects I'm going to scrap. I gotta take care of my, lobelia cultures and other stuff, and it's just, ugh. Ugh. God, I need to sleep. I'm gonna, get this video quickly smashed together and just put it out there, and then I'm going to go to bed. And, what I'll probably do is, maybe make a response video this week to something and just schedule it to upload later in the week. I don't know yet. What I want to do is, have a couple of pre-made things to just have go up during different times, just so that it's not just a big, like, push of stuff. So, why don't we, just, take it easy? I hope everyone's doing well, and, yeah, we will, get back to some stuff later. I hope y'all enjoyed my response to Wretched and their, answering the woman and gender question.